balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Urias fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Daniel Starkin, Blake Williams. Guys, it's sort of we were on this close to completing a perfect 5-0 week. They end up losing the finale to the Astros. We're going to get into that game. We're going to get into the injury updates and all sorts of stuff. But Daniel, I'll come to you first. I leave this game on Sunday, even though they lost. And even though it's sort of not the way I wanted to end the week, I still feel a lot better. Well, that's a stretch. I feel better about this team today than I did a week ago.
Yeah, I mean, the bullpen has found its form this week, I'd say. Who knows how long that'll last? We'll see. But overall, a very solid week. Unfortunately, you don't complete the sweep today. I haven't done many of these Sunday night live shows, so I was getting ready to dust off the old broom. I don't think he's made an appearance this season.
Not yet.
Unfortunately, had to put him away. We'll save that for another time. But yeah, you obviously would have loved the sweep. Would have been nice to complete the perfect week. But I think overall, compared to how they were playing, the previous 2 weeks before that, I think it was a solid week and something they could build off here.
Blake, for you, they go 4-1, as I said. They're still in third place in the division. They're 3 games back of the Diamondbacks, a half game back of the San Francisco Giants. But playing a better brand of baseball, the bullpen, which was our largest concern, we will get to, has been dominant over the last 7 or 8 days. Do you feel any differently about this team 7 days after our last show?
Not entirely. It was a good week, but my main concerns with the team are still there, and I don't think they've done enough to address those yet. Like, the bullpen was great, but I still don't think any of us are confident in the bullpen. The starting rotation has been kind of hit or miss, and I feel like that's still a major question. And then just the bottom of their lineup, they still have a lot of holes they need to fill. So I'm not entirely sure they changed my mind about the direction the team is going, but it was a good win and a good week, so it's hard to complain about those.
Yeah, well, let's get to this. We've got a super chat. Jonathan, we greatly appreciate you. We said our starting pitchers are allergic to innings 5 and 6, except for Kershaw. Some of the Dodgers starters of late, namely Tony Gonsolin and Bobby Miller, I would say, have struggled. These are guys that were pretty good for a while. Their last 2 starts have both not been ideal. Emmett Sheehan has gotten you 6 innings, 2 starts in a row. And then, of course, you've got some bullpen games and stuff mixed in. Daniel, what are your again, you haven't been on these Sunday night shows when we've done deep dives on some of these individual positioning groups. Last week, we did a scale of 1 to 10. Like, how nervous are you about each of the different groups? How are you feeling about Dodgers starting pitching today?
I mean, Julio threw a rehab start today, threw 4 innings, struck out 8 with Rancho. So he's on his way back, which is great news, obviously. But other than that, like you said, it's been kind of a mixed bag. Like Kirsch was great against the Angels. Sheehan had another good start. He's made 2 starts and has gone 6 innings both times. So obviously you like seeing that. Bobby Miller, I mean, it's been 1 inning for him kind of in both of his last 2 starts. And obviously they've been disaster innings, but I still think, he's a guy who, since he's been called up, has given you some length outside of these last couple. And then Gonsolin's the guy who's really been struggling. And tonight it wasn't really like he got his pitch count up early, which is kind of the theme with him in a lot of his starts and why he typically doesn't go deep. Tonight it was just ineffectiveness. He gave up a couple home runs, and I think with another off day tomorrow, 2 off days earlier in the week, I think Dave just kind of pulled the plug on him early there, and it kind of worked out. Like, the bullpen comes in and does its job, and the offense was able to come back and tie it in the 8th inning. So I think that was the right move. But yeah, obviously when you're pulling Gonsolin early there, you're not really anticipating, playing 11, 12 innings, whatever it was. Yeah. So I think maybe you try to get 1 more out of him if that's going to be the case. But I also think pulling him at that time is maybe why they came back. So I think right now, with the amount of off days they have, like, length isn't necessarily as important as much as just effectiveness. So I think that's why we didn't see much length out of Gonsolin today. But I think compared to a few weeks ago, I think the starting rotation is trending up. I think once you get Julio back in there, At least you have 5 healthy starters. That's always a good thing. And you got a couple guys at least that are throwing the ball well.
Yeah, Blake, I know this has been a storyline for the bullpen, is not only how bad they have been, but also how the starting rotation has not always set them up for success. Do you kind of agree with what Jonathan's getting at here, that the Dodgers need to start getting some more length from the non-Kershaw, I guess non-Emmett Sheehan starters in the rotation?
They probably need length just because you're going to wear out the bullpen even more, and we know how the bullpen hasn't been that effective to begin with. So once you get deeper into the season, I know we're already pretty far into it, and we're about at the halfway point, but really once you get even later in the season, like your bullpen is going to need help. So from that sense, you do need innings, but at the same time, I do think it's more, they just need effective innings. Like if you get 5 good innings, I'm going to take that over 7 Syndergaard type innings where they're giving up 5 or 6 runs in the start. So it's something they do kind of need to balance both sides of that. But yeah, they still have some issues to address with their rotation, I think. And the length their starters are going is one of them.
Yeah, well, let's talk specifically about the game that we just finished watching. The Dodgers lose 6-5 in 11 innings. They failed to complete the sweep of the Astros. Of course, they were down 3 runs in the 8th inning with 2 outs, nobody on, and make a comeback to force extra innings. They give up a run in the top of the 10th. They score one in the bottom of the 10th. Then they give up a run in the top of the 11th and can't get one back in the bottom of the 11th. I want to stay on the Gonsolin theme just because that's where we are at. You look at the box score, and I sent this to you guys ahead of time. Gonsolin to me is hilarious because he goes through stretches where he looks dominant for like 5 or 6 batters, and then all of a sudden it's double home run, and you're like, wait, what happened? Like he was striking everybody out. You hinted at his pitch count. He got 15 outs today on just 61 pitches. So incredibly efficient. 3 strikeouts is not perfect, but it's not terrible. He gives up 6 base runners in 5 innings. Again, it's not perfect. It's not terrible. The problem was he gives up 2 home runs. I sent this tweet out. He had thrown 800 splitters in 2022 and 2023 and allowed just 3 home runs. Today, in his first 8 splitters that he threw, he gave up 2 home runs. So kind of a weird outing for a guy in Gonsolin who that's his pitch. And I tweeted, I love David Cohn's reference. Some splitters take a seat, others pull up a chair. And that's exactly what happened. He pulled up a chair on both of those and they just hung over the middle of the plate. So Blake, I'll come to you. Give me your Tony Gonsolin analysis. We know the velocity is down. We know the stuff there's been some injury concerns and the non-injury concerns. Where do you rate him as a starter right now? Is he a guy you can have any degree of confidence in?
Well, to start with, your tweet about his splitter and the 800 pitches and only 3 of them being homers or whatever just brings me back to Kershaw in 2017 with the Astros, where his off-speed pitches were never hit out, and then the Astros hit all of them out. So,
are you saying the Astros are cheating tonight?
I'm not saying they're cheating. I'm just saying it's very similar. But regarding Gonsolin, I'm not entirely sure. It's his velocity being down is weird because Dave has been asked about it a few times, and he keeps saying like he's healthy. There's nothing physically wrong with him. So I don't know what to make of it. Someone asked him if it was like a dead arm Gonsolin was going through, and he said, no, I don't think that's the case. I know like Dave doesn't always give great answers when talking about injuries, but it's still just a weird situation. I don't think they'd make him pitch through an injury if there was something wrong with him, even with the state of their rotation, because they're going to think long-term and postseason more kind of thing. So it's just strange. It also feels like he's kind of like a 2-time through the order pitcher, and then he has to come out of the game. Like his best role is probably suited for like a bullpen type role. Like if we're being completely honest, because him going 5 innings pretty much every time out isn't amazing. I guess they could kind of piggyback him there with someone. It's just with the state of their rotation, and they just need more from him. So I'm just not sure what to make of him fully.
Yeah, Daniel, his last start out, 5 2/3, 7 earned runs. That was the most earned runs he had ever allowed in a start. Before that, 6 innings, 2 hits, no earned runs. I mean, he walked into the start against the Giants last weekend with a 1.93 ERA. It's now up to 3.30 after this one. I don't think I'm where Blake is. I don't think I'm starting to relegate Tony Gonsolin to the bullpen quite yet. That feels like a little bit of a stretch for a guy with an ERA as low as his over, a somewhat reasonable sample size the last few years, even if expected ERA and FIP and that kind of thing doesn't necessarily love Gonsolin. He still feels like a number 4.5 starter at worst to me.
No, yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Like if he's one of your bottom of the rotation type starters, I think you're not expecting as much length out of those guys. Like those are kind of the guys who are, like Blake was saying, 2 times through the order, and then when it gets back to the top of the lineup in the 5th or 6th inning, you're looking to make a move there, and that's pretty much what Gonsolin is. Like I know he's been really good at run prevention throughout the course of his career. Like the ERA numbers have always been really good for him, but the eye test and the stuff doesn't necessarily match that, and that's going to catch up with you eventually. I'm with you. I'm not saying, put him, out of the rotation completely, but when you're relying on him to be, your number 2 starter, that's when I think, you have problems. Once Julio comes back, if Kershaw stays healthy and some of these young guys start, or keep throwing the way they have, then you're looking at Gonsolin as your 5th starter. And I think it's more, that's kind of more the place that he should be in.
Blake, anything you want to add or chime in there?
I just want to clarify. I don't mean like he should be in their bullpen right now. I just mean like that's what he might be best suited for in an ideal world, where he can come in and pitch 2 or 3 innings and be a high leverage multi-inning type guy. Like I think that would be a great situation for him, but he's also a fine number 4 starter or some like back end of the rotation type with some more upside. I just don't think he's ever going to be like a top the rotation type piece.
Yeah, and I mean, look, they planned to piggyback him last year. That was the plan with Tyler Anderson, was that Gonsolin was the number 5 starter and Anderson was going to come in right after him, and then injuries, and then Tyler Anderson's emergence kind of threw a wrench in that. I did want to talk about one other thing from today's game before we get into kind of bigger picture week-long stuff. Blake, you mentioned the bottom of the Dodgers lineup today. So Mookie Betts goes 1 for 3, Freddie Freeman 2 for 5, Will Smith 1 for 4, JD Martinez 1 for 4. Everybody else in the Dodgers lineup today was a combined, let me get this number right, 1 for 21, I believe. 1 for 21. That one was a Peralta hit. So they go 1 for 21. All of them struck out at least once. 8 strikeouts combined from that group, just 1 walk. Rojas did walk. So in a game you lose 6-5, to have basically your 5 through 9 hitters as well as the guys pinch hitting for the number 4 hitter go 1 for 21. Daniel, I've said all along, I'm not worried about the Dodgers offense. This wasn't a great week for the Dodgers offense. Even though they win the 2 games against the Angels, they score 4 runs combined in those ones. So it's hard to feel that awesome about the Dodgers lineup, as good as the top 4 are, when 5 through 9 are going 1 for 21.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're seeing when you got a couple injuries to deal with. Like coming into the season, we were already saying like the bottom of the Dodgers lineup like isn't what it has been in previous years. And then on top of that, when you got 2 pretty much starters, that are out with injuries right now, Max Muncy and Chris Taylor, that lineup gets even shorter. Yeah. So like you said, you still obviously love the top 4 guys in that lineup, but right now you're trying to find a mix of something that'll work at the bottom. You're calling up some of these kids and giving them opportunities. And Michael Busch has come through at times, but, those aren't necessarily guys who are ready to be everyday guys. And Miguel Rojas, I mean, we all know with him that he's just not getting it done with the bat right now, but it's not like with Chris Taylor out, you don't have many options at shortstop right now. And I know we all love Mookie there. And that's, I think if you had to go win a ball game tomorrow, Mookie's your shortstop, but I don't think that's an everyday solution necessarily. And unfortunately, the bat just hasn't come around with Rojas.
Yeah, and I should clarify, Blake, Hayward and Peralta are both guys who have been solid. Peralta more of late, Hayward just season long. So kind of guys have bad games. It just doesn't help when those guys have a bad game. And then you get Outman 0 for 4 with 1 strikeout, which has become the norm. Miguel Rojas 0 for 3, Michael Busch 0 for 4. Those are the 3 spots that it feels like have been hurting the Dodgers, is that 7, 8, 9 spot. And again, people in the comments are mentioning it. Miguel Vargas is the other name that would normally be included in there. He comes up in a big spot with the runner on third in the 11th. All he needs to do is basically put the ball in play, and it's a time game, and he can't. Now, should he have walked? Were there some pitches that didn't get called his way? Sure, but at the end of the day, he swung through a hanging slider. He ends up striking out, and he's been brutal. So it's really that 7, 8, 9 spot. I'm with you. Again, I keep saying, like, if Muncy comes back, if Taylor comes back, Now we're pretty much talking about the 9 spot. the 7 and 8 become Hayward and Peralta, and things get a little bit better. And then you're just crossing your fingers that DeLuca or Bush or Outman or Vargas, one of these guys figures it out. But where are you at on the bottom of the lineup? Like Bush, Vargas? I mean, do you have confidence in any of these guys, Rojas, to turn it around?
It's a hard question because I think Vargas and Outman and Bush all have talent, but they're not really showing that they're ready. They haven't inspired a whole lot of confidence yet. And I think we're kind of seeing the result of what we talked about in the offseason, where they're going to rely on a lot of rookies and it could go south pretty quickly. So we're kind of seeing that happen.
Yeah.
They could turn it around at any moment and I wouldn't be shocked, but there's just nothing that's showing that that's going to happen soon. So I think if they want to be competitive, they probably need to go add a bat or two. And I know that's tough to say because we're also saying they need a starting pitcher and they need 2 or 3 relievers. So they have a lot of shopping to do at the trade deadline, which I may have an unpopular take on later if we get to that point.
Oh, gosh.
But yeah, it's just, I don't have a lot of confidence in the bottom of their lineup.
Hey, don't worry, Blake. I got a guy I'll tell you about later who's available for free right now. He's going to solve all their problems in the lineup.
Oh.
Okay, don't worry about that one. Let me ask you this question, because we are nearing when Max Muncy does come back, and we're going to get to an injury there. It does feel like the Dodgers are going to be presented with a Michael Bush or Miguel Vargas decision. You can keep Michael Bush at third base, move Max Muncy to second base, or you can put Muncy back at third and keep Vargas at second. Daniel, I'll come to you first. If they came to you and said, Daniel, who do you want us to keep? Do you want Michael Bush playing third, Muncy playing second, and Bush's bat? Or do you want Muncy playing third, Vargas playing second, and Vargas's bat?
To me, I would go with Bush, and that has more to do with how poorly Vargas has been. It's not like Bush is up here tearing the cover off the ball by any means, but I just feel like at this point, Vargas, it's now a very extended period of stretch where he's struggled here. I feel like, maybe a little reset mentally could do him well. The All-Star break's coming up in a couple weeks here. So if you could send him down for a couple weeks and hopefully, something could click down there. I don't know if it's mechanical stuff. I don't know if it's mental, but sometimes going down to AAA and facing that easier pitching could just get you going. And then, next thing you know, you're back up here in 2 or 3 weeks and you're feeling really good at the plate. So I think, to me, I would stick with Bush when Muncy comes back, just to give Vargas a little reset. And that also gives Bush like a little bit of a runway, which he hasn't really had, like outside of this week when Muncy went down. He's been up and down a couple times, but he hasn't really gotten consistent playing time. So you don't really know what you have in him, if he's ready, if he needs to be sent back down or not. So I think if you give him a solid 2 weeks of everyday at-bats, whereas Vargas goes down to AAA, gets 2 weeks of everyday at-bats down there, I think that could be best for everybody, honestly.
Blake, I would add into this before I let you respond that I think Bush at third base and Muncy at second base is an upgrade defensively over Muncy at third base and Vargas defensively at second. And that's less a knock on Vargas at second and more a reaction to what we've seen out of Max Muncy at third base. I'm not saying Michael Bush is going to win a Gold Glove, but I've been pleasantly surprised with some of the plays that he has made over there at third. So I'm with Daniel for all the reasons he said. I would give Bush a leash that he hasn't gotten. Like we've seen Vargas with a runway and he hasn't gotten it done. Let's give Bush the same opportunity. Let's put Max Muncy in a better defensive position, a more comfortable defensive position, and just see what happens. Bush also has more pop. I think as a hitter, he's less bat to ball skills like Vargas and more pop. So maybe you just catch lightning in a bottle a couple of times. But for me, I would rather keep Bush, send Vargas down, see if he can figure some things out. I know you and Scotty are shotgun in the Miguel Vargas train. So I apologize for putting you on the spot here, but are you sticking with your guy or do you want Michael Bush?
So the Dodgers had this guy in AAA who had a 400 on base percentage. They just called him up today.
That's not what I asked, Blake. This isn't what I asked. This is Yanni Hernandez hour.
He wants to give Yanni a runway, huh?
Yeah, but my serious answer is I do think Bush needs some playing time. There's never been questions about his bat. It's always been he's going to be like a 30 home run hitter possibly, who's going to hit like 250, 260. And he hasn't got that runway to see that yet. So with what you said, he looks really good at third base, which is probably the most surprising thing because the main thing about him has always been he's probably a DH. So the fact that he looks good with such limited playing time at third base is pretty encouraging. So I think you have to see what he can do with some more playing time, see if that offense can pick up.
Yeah. All right. We got another super chat. So, Steven, we appreciate it. Despite the loss today, congratulations to Freddie Freeman on the 2000 hit club. It was a cool moment for Freddie. Glad he got to do it at home. Clearly, it meant something to him, which is cool. I never know how to react to a 2000 hit club because I know, on one hand, they put up the graphic. I think there's only 6 active players who have 2000 hits. So that tells you kind of what an exclusive club it is. Elvis Andrus is on that list for what it's worth. So, maybe it devalues it a little bit, but I did think that was a positive moment. And Daniel, right in the middle of the best stretch for the Dodgers, their ability down 3 runs in the 8th. It was a full count. Mookie gets hit by the pitch. Freddie Freeman ropes a double. Will Smith, dead center home run. All of a sudden, the game is tied. So as bad as I just said, the 5 through 9 hitters were 1 for 21. And yet the Dodgers scored 5 runs and forced this into 11 innings. Freddie Freeman right in the middle of that.
Yeah, no, congrats to Freddie. Like you said, I mean, 2000 is like 3000 hits is the real milestone you want to get to, but you got to get to 2000 first at some point. Freddie's,
they tell me. That's what they tell me.
Got a lot of years left here, so congrats to him. And I honestly, like the last few games, he's kind of been struggling a little bit. Like it's kind of the worst rough patch he's had. I don't know if this had anything to do for it. Like you said, I know he wanted to get to 2000 at home here, but now I guess now that he's gotten it, maybe he could get locked back in because. As bad as the bottom of the order has been when Freddie is going right and Mookie's going right and Will's going right at the top of that lineup, that doesn't, matter as much. So yeah, congrats to Freddie. I thought it was cool. He got a little curtain call. Dodgers fans showed him some love. So that was great.
Blake, I'll throw you on the spot here. Freddie Freeman, as of today, is 33, almost 34 years old. He hasn't had a 200 hit season in his career. It does no, is that right? Yeah, no 200 hit seasons. He had 199 hits last season. He's got 95 through 76 games, so he's on pace for about 200. He's obviously would need 5 200 hit seasons from here on out. You think Freddie Freeman has a chance at 3,000 hits? Almost 34 years old?
He has a chance. I'm not gonna bet on him getting there, but I wouldn't say it's out of the realm of possibilities. He could probably DH for a few years once his Dodger contract is up. But with some team, whether he goes back to the Braves or stays with the Dodgers, I think his hit ability is going to age pretty well like it already has. So I don't see why not.
Yeah, I mean, at 33, almost 34, if he plays for 6 more seasons, that would be, basically before he turns 40. To your point, he plays first base, then he would be playing DH. So it's a low risk injury position. Could he crank out 4, 190 hit seasons and then a couple of 130 hit seasons or something like that? It feels to me, Daniel, as I do the math, I'm with Blake. I mean, maybe a 25% chance. Would you say that's about right, Daniel?
Yeah, to me, it just kind of comes down to how long he wants to play. Like if he wants to play to 41 or 42 or whatever, like some of these other guys have done, then I think he has a chance. But if he's got 5 years left and that puts him at 39, asking him to get 200, close to 200 hits all 5 of those seasons, that's a very, very tall task. So yeah, I'd say 25% is right around.
And I guess I should say he's on pace to end this season with about 2,100 hits. So he would need 900 hits in the 5. So that's worth pointing out. This is a great comment from BC. Only 289 players in MLB history out of almost 25,000 have 2,000 hits. So that puts Freddie Freeman in the 99th percentile. So definitely an impressive thing, 2,000 hits. So kudos to Freddie Freeman on that one. All right, let's get to some of the other news about the Dodgers from around kind of besides just today's game. But I think this first one, I think is the biggest storyline of the past week. And we saw it again today, and that's the Dodgers bullpen. So last Saturday, they lost 15-0 to the San Francisco Giants. Since that game, the Dodgers bullpen has thrown 28 1/3 innings and allowed just 1 earned run since last Saturday. And Blake, as you were pointing out on our live watch there in the 11th, even the 1 earned was kind of a crappy earned run, right? Like this was a
pop up, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking about potentially 28 1/3 innings of no earned runs from a Dodgers bullpen. And, some guys gave up runs today with the runner on second, both Gratterall and Almonte. Those don't go in the book as earned runs. So you've got Almonte, who's thrown 4+ innings scoreless in that stretch. Ferguson's at 3. Gonzalez 2 2/3, Bickford 2, Grove 2, Gratterall 4. Obviously, Evan Phillips has continued to be dominant. Ryan Brazier was the only one to give up a run in the stretch. So to me, that's a massive storyline because a week ago, this was like DEFCON 5. Everybody's panicking about the bullpen. They've got to find 4 or 5 guys. And now you fast forward and you say, you know, we're not saying it's perfect, but maybe this bullpen, Blake, is closer to league average than it is to 31st or whatever it was a week ago.
Yeah, maybe when they start to get settled in, I'd still just like to see a longer stretch, like 28 innings. It's impressive, but it's still a pretty small chunk of the season. Yeah. And we've seen them be very bad a lot more than we've seen them even be good. So I think we all still are going to want them to make 2 or 3 moves for relievers at the deadline, or just add 2 to 3 relievers anyway, whether it's acquiring people through players who are on waivers or moving starters to the bullpen or calling starters up and moving them to the bullpen. So I don't think there's going to be anyone too confident in the bullpen yet, but it's a step in the right direction. So that's encouraging.
Yeah, and apologies to the comments. I always screw this up. DEFCON 1 is apparently worse than DEFCON 5. So my apologies to anybody there. DEFCON 1, I think we were at with the bullpen. I remember hearing a podcast host talk about that. Like, DEFCON 5 sounds worse, but it actually is less bad than DEFCON 1. So we were DEFCON 1, Daniel. You weren't on the show last week. So we didn't get your thoughts a week ago. I mean, Ferguson had a great stretch. As I said, Almonte, 4+ innings now scoreless. Like, how are you feeling about the bullpen right now?
I think it's just the ebbs and flows of a 162 game season. Like you just said, it was DEFCON 1 a week ago, and for most of the season they've been bad. But hey, I think you gotta praise them for the week they had here. We could be sitting here talking about a very different week. They might have gone 1-4 instead of 4-1 if it wasn't for the bullpen. Like we've been talking about the offense, how, especially in that Angels series, it wasn't like they were tearing the cover off the ball, and the bullpen came up huge there first in the first game with Kirsch. And then even you put the 28.1 innings there, that you could add 2 more innings onto that because they had a bullpen game where
I included, to be fair, I cheated and I included Graterol start. Okay. That's ridiculous that doesn't count as reliever.
As you should. So yeah, it was a great week. I think, looking at each individual guy, there's definitely some guys you're encouraged about, but we might be sitting here a week from now saying the exact opposite. So I think it's clear that, bullpen help needs to come between now and the deadline. Like Blake was saying, I think that's probably their biggest need. I know you got Daniel Hudson's coming back. He's looked good in his rehab starts. Jimmy Nelson has looked good in his rehab starts. My guy, Blake's guy too, from Alabama. So if you get 2 of those guys back and they're pitching well, I think that helps. But I still think just with how volatile bullpens are, you might be talking about a guy that's great now, and 2 weeks from now you might be talking about how he needs to go and he's awful. So I think the more darts you could throw at your bullpen, just like Blake was saying, even waiver claims, whatever. That's how the Dodgers got Evan Phillips 2 years ago, kind of around this time. They claimed him off waivers, and now he's unquestionably pretty much the only guy we trust back there. So I think you just got to keep throwing darts, see what sticks, move guys, starters that aren't in the rotations of the bullpen. We saw Michael Grove come out of the bullpen on Friday night, pitch 2 really good innings. Looks like his stuff was playing up a little bit. So, obviously you're encouraged after 28 great innings like that, but I don't think any of us would be surprised if the bullpen turns around and gets rocked again next week.
Yeah. Let me ask you this real quick. 7th inning, Dodgers are up 3-2. How many guys in the Dodger bullpen right now do you trust? Like, do you feel decent about coming into that game? Obviously, Evan Phillips is one. I mentioned some of the other names: Almonte, Ferguson, Gonzalez, Bickford, Graterol. I would say are sort of the top names on that list. Blake, I'll let you go first. Do you feel good about any of those guys in a 1-run game in the 7th inning right now besides Phillips?
Maybe Caleb Ferguson, but I'm kind of on the fence with him. I know he had that rough stretch, but overall he's still been good, and I think he's still one of their more talented arms, but it's not like even close to my level of trust with Evan Phillips. And I would mainly more trust him versus lefties than if he had to face like a string of good righties. So I guess it's more of a no than Ferguson, but if I had to pick one, it's Ferguson.
Okay, Daniel, we know you're on the Brewstar train. So do you have a list of Phillips,
I think
Brewstar, and
Phillips and Ferguson, I think, are trustworthy for the most part, and Gratterall's a half right now, so 2.5, I guess.
Yeah.
I think until Gratterall, he doesn't miss enough bats for you to fully trust them, especially your high leverage guys. You need them to be able to come in any situation, guys on base, clean inning, whatever the case may be. And I don't necessarily trust Gratterall with guys on base right now. The overall numbers have been good, and I think he's gotten more hate than he should, probably considering how bad the rest of the bullpen is. But I agree at the end of the day that he doesn't miss bats, and that's what you want out of your high leverage guys in big spots. So until we see that, which I don't think we're gonna, I'm never fully gonna trust him.
Yeah, and that's why I said 7th inning. I think Gratterall would be on my list if we're talking the 7th inning. It can be easy to, be really mad at a reliever because they give up a run here and there. But if you look around the league, like Gratterall, if you're talking about comparing the third best relief pitcher in a bunch of bullpens, I think Gratterall is probably about league average for the third best reliever. I've been on the Caleb Ferguson. I didn't really get off the Caleb Ferguson train. Blake can verify that one. He had like 4 bad games, and other than that, he's been absurd. Like before that, and like the 6 appearances since then. I think coming in to face, Trout and Ohtani the other day and getting 2 strikeouts definitely made me feel a little bit better. So I've got Phillips, I've got Ferguson, and I would put Gratterall on the list because we're talking 7th inning. I'm not asking him to close out games. But I say that because if you've got those 3, then I think that frames it in a sort of a slightly more optimistic light, because then you're looking at some guys that if Almonte climbed into that group, if Victor Gonzalez climbed into that group, if Blake Trinan comes back, if Fire Eisen ever comes back, if some of these younger guys like Grove go to the bullpen, Phil Bickford, baby, 4 Ks and 2 innings in his return. I mean, like, I just think the pen isn't elite, maybe like we've been spoiled by having in the Dodgers system of late, but I do think that it's fine. Like, I guess is the best way for me to describe the Dodgers bullpen, or it's close to fine. Maybe it's not the worst pen in baseball. I think we've sort of course corrected from there. If they end up the season with like the 15th best DRA, that wouldn't totally surprise me. And that wouldn't be awesome heading into the playoffs, but it wouldn't kill me either. So, okay, let's move on to some injuries, because I think this is the other big storyline coming out of the Dodgers camp this past week. And we got a ton of injury updates here. So we'll start with the biggest one. Daniel mentioned this one already. Julio Urias pitched in Rancho today, 60 pitches, 4 innings. Reportedly, 3 of those 4 were 1-2-3 innings, which is good. He gives 8 strikeouts in 4 innings, a run, 2 hits, and a walk. Obviously, the caveat here, this is Rancho. We're not even talking about Oklahoma City or Tulsa. We're talking about A-ball here. But the good news is Julio expected back for the series against the Royals this upcoming weekend. Blake, we know Julio has struggled mightily this season. I believe his ERA is approaching 5. Which is an anomaly for a guy who's been one of the better pitchers in baseball statistically. 4.4 on the season. For a guy who had a 2.16 last year, 2.96 the year before that, 3.27, 2.49. So has been very good the last 4 innings. What version of Julio are you expecting coming off of what was kind of a weird rehab assignment? They were expecting him back. Then he didn't really respond well. So then he actually had to send him on a real rehab assignment. And now here he is. Give me your take on Julio Urias and confidence levels moving forward.
You mean the Dodgers weren't very correct about their injury rehab assignments and everything?
This is going to be a theme. This is going to be a theme as I go down this list of players. The guy Daniel Hudson, who's next, who is expected to be ready by opening day. So, yes, to be clear, the Dodgers and their injury updates, not awesome.
Yeah, with Julio, I think you have to expect him to be better. I'm not sure if he's going to get back to the ace level he was last year just because he was so bad this year. I think there is some unlucky results with him, like his home run allowed rate was much higher than his career normals. So I think when that comes back down a bit and regresses to like a normal area, he's going to be better just because of that. So I think if you expect Julio to come back and be the ace of the staff again, you're probably going to be let down. If you expect him to come back and be a really good 2 or 3, then I think that's fair to say. You just have to hope he's better than the number 5 type he was pitching at this season.
Daniel, are you kind of in the same boat? Maybe he's not a number 1, but closer to a 2.5 type starter.
Yeah, I mean, remains to be seen, I'd say, but I will say that he should be very motivated. Like, after all, this is a contract year for him, and he's already the first half has not gone well, so he's obviously wants to turn that around in the second half, with a lot of money on the line this winter. And who knows, in the long run, it could be a blessing in disguise to kind of limit his innings by him missing a month or whatever he's missed. And I don't know, like, his last few outings before he got hurt were, I think, especially bad. So I don't know if it was a lingering issue, whatever it is. So as long as he's healthy, I still feel good whenever Julio's on the mound. Like you guys were saying, I don't know if he's going to be, an ace 2.1 ERA the rest of the season in the Cy Young mix, but you don't necessarily need that. We talked about the lack of, innings they've gotten from their starters as far as going deep into games. Like, adding another starter who could go 6 innings pretty much every start, that alone is going to be a big help. So I don't know exactly what to expect from him. It wouldn't surprise me if he comes out and looks like an ace. It wouldn't surprise me if he comes back and looks how he did before the injury. We'll see. But at this point, with how many injuries they've had, it's just good to see a guy is healthy and on the verge of returning here. Like you said, they've been saying stuff and other things have happening. So now I think we're finally at the point where he's about to return, which is great, obviously.
The good news for Julio is the bar of comparison has been lowered. I mean, take whoever the Dodgers' 5th starter has been. That was a bullpen game a few days ago, and that's who Julio Urias is replacing at the moment. So that's the good news. If he comes up and has a 3.9 ERA, people are going to be fine with it. People, he'll still get criticized because he's Julio, but anybody who has experienced the last month and a half of Dodger baseball is going to say, that's fine. That's fine. We'll take, 6 innings and 2 runs and then 6 innings and 3 runs. Like, we will live with that because it's far better for the bullpen. It's far better for the team in the long run. So again, grain of salt. It was a rehab start at A-ball, but 8 strikeouts in 4 innings is what you want to see. Like, it's one thing if you go down there and sort of scuffle a little bit. If you go out there and you strike out 2/3 of the batters that you face, that's kind of what you want to see. The other bit of really good news, I would say, for the Dodgers is Daniel Hudson. We just talked about the bullpen. How many guys do you trust in the 7th inning? Well, it sounds like the Dodgers are a week away from a guy that we all think we're probably going to trust. We hope we're going to trust in the 7th inning or later. He faced 4 batters today. That was kind of the last hurdle for him. They wanted him to complete an inning, go sit down, and come back and have to get one more out. He got all 4 batters he faced out. He struck out 3 of them. This was at AAA. He retired 10 of the 11 batters he faced in Oklahoma City. Daniel, we just talked about the bullpen and the woes. We know Hudson's getting up there in age. We know that the knee was supposed to be ready by opening day, and now here we are, end of June, and he's here. But for a bullpen that desperately needs help, it's hard not to be excited specifically about Daniel Hudson coming back.
Yeah, and I think out of all the injured guys they have, like, if you ask me, like, who's most likely to come back and make an impact, like, as a legit, like, high leverage reliever, I think we'd all say Hudson. So I think it's great news. And similar to Julio, like, obviously it's not ideal that he missed the first half of the season, but if you could get him back healthy here at the beginning of July, that still gives you 3 months where he could be fresh towards the end of the season and hopefully one of your best relievers. So I think it's great. I think I don't expect him to immediately come in and take over the closer's role from day one, but if he could work his way into the point where he joins that group of high leverage guys, that would be huge because that kind of moves everyone else down, one slot there.
Yeah, I mean, Hudson in 2022, Blake, 25 appearances, 2.22 ERA, a 2.74 expected ERA, and a 2.04 FIP. You just don't see a FIP that low. But he's also 36 years old. I know how you feel about bullpen arms, Blake. For a guy that's a veteran who's had 2 really good seasons leading into this one, like, do you have any more confidence in a guy like Hudson, or is this definitely still a wait and see situation for you?
I have some confidence in him because he's been a very good reliever when he was healthy. But as you mentioned, the age, he's 36. He's had the major knee and ankle problems there. So he could come back and the knee or ankle might not hold up even if he's pitching well. We just don't know. Like, of course, injury risks are always a problem for pitchers especially. But when it's taken you that long to recover, and I believe he said it's something that they're going to have to deal with throughout the season where he's always going to have that pain there. It's just not ideal. So I have some faith that he can come back and be good. I'm just not sure he'll make it through the end of the season, or if he does make it through, like how effective will he be, especially if he's dealing with pain.
I want you all to know that's the most optimistic and positive you will ever hear Blake Williams talking about a relief pitcher. I mean, it was just like effervescent. The praise just flowing out of your mouth. I mean, I can't believe how positive you were about Daniel Hudson there. And I will just keep that train going. Jimmy Nelson's next on my list, Blake. Your guy rolled Tide, a scoreless inning for Oklahoma City. They did say the difference with him, whereas I think Hudson is going to be expected back this week with the Dodgers. Nelson still seems like he's a week, maybe even 2 weeks away. The velocity is still way down. This is a guy who hasn't pitched in a million years, it feels like. But did get a scoreless inning for Oklahoma City. Look, for the Dodgers, in a normal year, if Jimmy Nelson was doing what he's doing, it's like, great, nice depth piece. Let him sit down in the minors for a little bit and see what happens. This year, you look at the Nick Robertsons and the Ryan Braziers of the world, and it's like, sure, Daniel, give me some Jimmy Nelson in my life, because why not? Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting too much with Nelson, to just being realistic. Obviously, I love Jimmy Nelson. I love, it's been 2 years, but, he was great that 1 year when he stayed healthy for maybe like a half a season or whatever it was. But his issue is he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. So I don't think I'm setting the expectations real low. So if he could come in and produce and be, anything for them down the stretch, whether that be like a mid-tier, leverage type guy, like not necessarily high leverage, but someone you kind of trust a little bit. I think the Dodgers would gladly take that. I think we talked at length about all the injuries they dealt with, and you're mentioning some guys who I don't think any of us would have had them on the radar of key Dodgers bullpen guys at the end of June. Like, I don't know if anyone, Brazier wasn't even in the organization. Robertson was not really on anyone's radar. So I think if you could get, Jimmy Nelson healthy for a couple months here, you'll take it. But I'm not setting the expectations very high.
Blake, roll Tide. Anything more to say there?
No, I think that's a fair expectation. When Nelson's healthy, he's been incredibly good throughout his entire career. The problem is the when hasn't happened very much. I think the 1 year he was a starter, healthy for the full year, he was like top 10 in Cy Young voting. And then, as we saw with the Dodgers in 21, he was probably their best reliever, pitching at a very elite level, but it's just been so limited. It's hard to say like he'll stay healthy or continue producing at that level. So I think Daniel had a good take on that.
Chris Taylor, Max Muncy, the last two
Blake.
updates. Yeah, there we go. Chris Taylor and Max Muncy, the last two updates here. Taylor placed on the injured list today, backdated to June 22nd, meaning July 2nd is the earliest he can return. I believe it's classified as a bone bruise. What's interesting here is he left the game on the 16th. He made 2 pinch hit appearances against the Angels this week, and then it was backdated to those. So realistically, the guy has already been out for 9 days. He made 2 pinch hit appearances, but doesn't go on the IL until technically on Thursday of this past week. So that's the Taylor update. I would add Dave Roberts' update on him. Blake did not sound promising. I mean, we've joked about, should we believe anything Dave Roberts says? The answer is probably no, especially as it relates to injuries. But I didn't read the quotes that our own Matthew Moreno posted on Twitter and think, oh, good, Chris Taylor's going to be back on July 2nd. That definitely felt like cross your fingers and hope that he's back when the All-Star break ends. Did you feel the same way?
I didn't see the quotes, but when Dave Roberts gives an unoptimistic answer, you can usually assume the guy's going to be out a few months, if not the year. And when he gives an optimistic answer, you can assume it's probably going to be a month. So, I mean, I think they handled his injury situation poorly. Like, they didn't put him on the IL and they kept him on the roster. Then they had him pinch hit and then they kept him out again. And then they put him on the IL just for that whole week or whatever it was. It was just, they're very weird with their injuries and how they handle things. It confuses me, but I guess it's kind of worked somewhat over the last decade. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to put the quote here, but I'll just read Matt's tweet. I posted in the chat. Dave Roberts previously said Chris Taylor has, quote, cartilage wear and tear in his right knee, gave an ominous answer when asked about structural damage. I do know it's a bone bruise, but I think with everyone, there's always something with the knee. I don't know specifically what it is. That was the quote. So Matt's language there was the ominous piece for what it's worth. Daniel, the other piece here is Max Muncy was eligible to return on Friday, did not, still having trouble with his left hamstring. The hope is that he will return on Tuesday. The key word there being hope is that he returns on Tuesday.
Yeah. And I also noticed you're missing one guy from this list here. Noah Syndergaard faced hitters this week. That could be the savior that this rotation needs.
I think our AA podcast is covering that one. I think they're keeping tabs on Syndergaard's development. So no disrespect.
I was also, while we were talking about how Roberts doesn't really know what's going on with injuries, it was funny this week. He was asked about Syndergaard, and he said, like, until guys start getting close, start throwing, they're not really on my radar. So he didn't know. And then either an hour later or the very next day, Syndergaard was on the mound facing hitters.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Again, Dave's saying the same thing. He's like, our AA guys are all over it. They know what's going on with Syndergaard.
Can we not break up that rotation in AA? Like, fair. Send Syndergaard to AAA and keep that AA rotation together.
Yeah. He's going to hurt the velocity.
There.
Yeah. The highest velocity fastball of any team in any level is going to be hurt if Noah Syndergaard reports.
Yeah, who would have thought, 5 years ago we'd be sitting here saying Noah Syndergaard would bring down the average velocity of a AA rotation.
Crazy. Some other odds and ends I just want to file through here real quick. Blake, I'll come to you with this one. Andre Jackson traded to the Pirates after being DFA'd for cash considerations. Any thoughts on Andre Jackson's departure from the organization?
I was surprised they DFA'd him instead of someone else. And I'm not surprised they moved him for cash. I mean, it seems like he was just a guy on their roster once they DFA'd him. And I hope he gets a shot to show what he can do now. And hard feelings or anything.
Well, I'm glad you said about the roster, because somebody asked this in the chat earlier, and I actually thought it was a good one. Who comes off of the 40-man roster when Hudson and Nelson return? Hudson's the one that is expected back. You've got Justin Brule in the minors. You've got Brian Hudson in the minors as two guys that could come off. Ricky Vanasco. I mean, those are Alex Vesia. Those are the pitchers. Obviously, you've got Syndergaard on the 15-day IL, so he's taking up a 60-man spot. So, I mean, you go down some of those lists. Brian Hudson feels like a guy who could potentially be DFA'd. I mean, Ricky Vanasco they traded for. I don't understand that move at all. Syndergaard is just sitting there waiting to be DFA'd. I mean, I don't know. Are there two of those guys that jump out to you? Daniel, I'll come to you, I guess. Who comes?
You can just transfer Syndergaard to the 60-day IL. I don't imagine he'll be back at any point. So that instead of just DFAing, you could do that, and then theoretically you have him down the road if you need him. If a lot of other guys get hurt or whatever, and those other guys I've barely.
Frazier is another name.
I'm sorry, I do not have some hot Brian Hudson take for you.
Blake, who do you think if you had to pick two of those guys? So Syndergaard to the 60-day IL for Daniel Hudson probably solves one of your problems. But if and when Jimmy Nelson gets activated, is it Brazier? Is it Brian Hudson? I mean, it sure seems like this guy Vanasco, who they traded for in the middle of this 40-man roster crunch, is sticking around for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It's probably Brian Hudson. That's who I'm going to go with. It wouldn't shock me if they DFA Brazier just because he's an older guy and he's been
awesome.
Hasn't been great in quite a while, but he's also looked okay, and they have him on the 26-man right now. So I guess that would be a little shocking. So yeah, it probably has to be Brian Hudson.
Okay, let's get to some more of these odds and ends. Daniel, I'll come to you with this one. Emmett Sheehan, the first pitcher in the modern era, so that's 1900 on, to allow no more than 3 hits and pitch 12 plus innings through his first 2 starts. He had no hits until the 3rd inning of Friday's game. Give me your scouting report on Emmett Sheehan and degree of confidence that he's going to be a real contributor from here on out.
Well, I even felt bad. That first hit he gave up was a pretty routine ground ball to Miguel Rojas at short, and he just kind of took his time throwing it to first. So who knows if they get that out, maybe he could have kept it going. But obviously he's been great so far. 2 starts is a very small sample, but also a guy who doesn't have any experience above AA. Like, I don't think any of us would have imagined his 2 starts would be as good as they were. The fastball looks good. He commands it well at the top of the zone, which I think is kind of what we've seen in recent years is what, pitchers really have success with at this level. So I think it's been great. I imagine they're going to continue trotting him out there as long as he continues to pitch well. So honestly, who knows? Who knows where the team would be right now if it wasn't for some of these young guys that have come up and pitched well right away. Like the starting rotation outside of Clayton Kershaw, every single starter on the roster has been on the IL at one point or another. And you look at, Sheehan has come up and done really well. Bobby Miller, until these last couple starts, came up and did really well. So credit to those guys. I know that's not an easy thing to do. Neither of them was supposed to sniff the majors until after the All-Star break, or in Sheehan's case, probably not even this year at all. So for them to be contributing here in June, it's not an overall, the state of the overall rotation isn't great that they've had to, go that far into their depth this early in the season, but credit to those guys. They've been huge.
Yeah. Blake, real quick. I mean, Bobby Miller, 13 earned runs in his last 2 appearances, gets shelled again, 10 hits in 4 innings. I'll ask you a funny question, Blake. Who do you trust more, Emmett Sheehan or Bobby Miller?
Still Bobby Miller. I know he had the rough outings. I'm sure Sheehan will have a rough outing at least at some point. I think what concerns me with Sheehan the most is he's not really getting any strikeouts, which he was doing in Double-A, so they'll probably come at some point as he keeps adjusting and getting more comfortable. But he's also probably been a bit lucky pitching that well without getting strikeouts. It's kind of like a situation where you have to imagine Bruce Starr going out there and pitching for 6 innings and how that would go. Sheehan has a better fastball than Bruce Starr. I know people might jump on that one a little with the velocity, but Sheehan's fastball has a lot of movement, and Dave Roberts was talking about how unique it is and how it does get a lot of swing and miss. So I think we'll start to see that at some point, but Bobby Miller is he looks like he has ace level stuff. He looks like a top of the rotation guy. And with him, it's really just been 1 inning in each of his starts where he's kind of fallen apart. So if he kind of gets that under control, he should be fine again and back to pitching closer to how he was when he first came up.
Yeah, and I know this is counter to everything we said at the beginning, but maybe get a little bit of a tighter leash on Bobby Miller when he gives up 1 run through 4. This is his 5th inning. Hit, walk, hit, grand slam, walk, double, single, and then he's removed. I don't know, maybe earlier in that inning is when we go get the guy who gave up 7 and earned the game before. So there we go. Daniel, I'll come back to you. Another odds and ends here. Mookie Betts, nearly 3 consecutive games with the leadoff home run. Pretty ridiculous stuff for Mookie. Unfortunately, everything cooled off from him after that leadoff at bat today.
Yeah. It looks like he looks ready for the home run derby, though.
There you go.
And now, I mean, the Dodgers record for most leadoff homers is Jock Peterson hit 9. Mookie is now at 8. It's June 25th. So I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I'm going to say Mookie's going to break that record this year.
Blake, your thoughts? Mookie going to break Jock Peterson's leadoff home run record?
I would probably bet on it at this point. As he was saying, he needs 2 more to break the record, and he's got quite a while left, half the season. So yeah, probably.
Yeah, to BMR's point, he almost did walk it off. It felt like he got all of that one. I believe it was in the 10th inning was the sac fly that tied the game, but just barely missed it there. So, all right, let's get to some questions here. I think we hit all the stuff that was on my list. So let's get to some questions for you. I do have a great food question that I've asked these 2 guys to prepare for. So it's going to be a good one. Prepare yourselves for that. But we got a few minutes worth of questions, so throw those in the chat. David has this question. This bullpen would look a lot better if the starters weren't injured. Do you agree? I actually do agree to some degree. I don't think all of the bullpen's problems are on the starters, but I do think that it hasn't helped their cause. And I would actually argue that over the last couple of weeks, it's flipped. I think that the starters have started to look worse because, like I just said with Bobby Miller, I think Dave Roberts has extended the leash on guys like Gonsolin and Miller, left them out to die a little bit more because he knows that the guys are coming in aren't helping. So I do agree with the question. I think the bullpen's overall numbers would be better if they were getting better performances from their starting pitching. That's my take. Blake?
Yeah, probably. I think it's all interconnected. When the starters are doing better, the bullpen's going to tend to do better. And when the bullpen's doing better, your starters might tend to do better. It's just, I think the Dodgers want to look at their pitching as a pitching staff as a whole and not necessarily as a bullpen and a rotation, which is kind of like the future they're hoping to look at. I haven't got there yet, and it's still teams are going to rely on the rotation. But yeah, I think they do need their starters to be better for their bullpen to be better too.
Okay. All right, Daniel, I'll come to you with this one. Michael wants to know, what's the record for the Dodgers on their upcoming road trip? They've got a 3-game set in Colorado and then a 3-game set in Kansas City. So 2 of the worst teams in Major League Baseball, all on the road. And we know what Coors Field typically does to the Dodgers. Give me a record prediction in those 6 games.
I think you got to go at least 4-2. Like, those are 2 teams that you got to at least win the series. So I think if you take 2 out of 3 from both, I think you could call that a good road trip. Like you just mentioned, they have struggled in Colorado, especially their pitching staff and their bullpen. So we'll see how that goes. But if let's say they win 1 out of 3 in Colorado, then I think they're more than capable of sweeping the Royals there. So I'd say you need to get at least 4 wins.
Blake, everything inside of Blake wants to say 3-3 out loud right now. Go ahead, Blake, do it.
You know what I was thinking? I was going to say either 3-3 or 5-1 just to be different than Daniel. But playing at Coors, like, you never know what's going to happen with those games. It's just, they're always so random.
Yeah.
So, but the Royals are probably one of the worst teams we've seen in quite a while to begin with also. So you probably need to take 2 from them. And I think 1 or 2 from the Rockies is probably the fair expectation. So realistically, I think you're looking at 3 or 4.
Give me 5-1. 5-1. That's my take. Blake, I'll come to you with this one. Have the struggles of the rookie position players exposed the farm system? Does this lack of player pipeline success for multiple years at the big league level concern you?
I don't think so necessarily. What we've always seen with the Dodgers is they wait a very long time to promote rookies and prospects. But this year, for whatever reason, whether it's saving money or just wanting to give guys a shot, they seem to have rushed some more players, at least more than they're used to. Like, usually when they bring in a young player, he's going to be the one young player in the lineup. But right now they have 3 or 4 some nights. So I don't think it's anything to be concerned about at this point. And they still have a very high ranking farm system.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you just never know with these prospects. Like, they pan out sometimes and sometimes they don't, no matter how highly they're ranked or what people think of them. There's just so much randomness to it. So I wouldn't panic over what we would consider a bad stretch of player development, because at the same time, a lot of teams would consider this a good stretch of player development, even with some of their guys struggling. Like, if one team, like one of the bad teams, put 4 rookies in their lineup that they developed, like they would think they have the best player development system that they've had in the last 10 years. Yeah. So even though it looks like the Dodgers aren't getting Corey Seager or Cody Bellinger type players right now, they're still developing major league players, and a lot of teams would be jealous of that.
Yeah, and I will say too, the only 3, I should say, there's 4 guys who have come up who were top 100 prospects. That would be Vargas, Bush, Stone, and Miller. Miller has unequivocally been a success. I think even with the last 2 starts struggling the way that they have. And obviously Stone was really, really bad, so you can't really defend that one. Vargas and Bush have struggled. The fact that Sheehan has come up and given you something, the fact that Outman has come up and given you something, neither of those guys were top 100 prospects. And so the fact that you're getting, as bad as Outman has been, remember how good he was. It all averages out. He's like a 750 OPS guy, which for a rookie is pretty freaking good for a guy who's really good defensively in center field as well. And so I think saying that this has been a failure from position players or from rookies is a little bit of an over exaggeration because, and Blake, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the strength of late, when you look at like farm system reports, has been in the pitching. So the fact that they have all these position players coming up and saying, oh, well, these guys are struggling. Like, the position players weren't necessarily the top prospects in the Dodgers farm system. Cartaya was, Pages was, Vargas was, and sometimes Bush, depending on the list you were looking at. But mostly the top end talent for the Dodgers has been on the pitching side. And aside from Gavin Stone, I would say with Bobby Miller and Emmett Sheehan, it's been a pretty positive thing. So that would be my take there. Let's get to some other questions here. James, who's the long-term second baseman? Vargas, Bush, Lux, or none of the above? Daniel, quickly.
I still think it's Vargas. I know he's struggled, but he's a rookie. I think we've been, you guys just talked about this, but we've been spoiled in past years where guys just come up and look like all-stars right away. Like, I don't think that's always how it goes. So I don't think just because he struggled the last couple months doesn't mean I'm out on him for his whole career. I still trust that he's going to get it figured out and be maybe not necessarily like an all-star or anything, but he could be an above average second baseman. My answer would be Lux if there was another answer out there somewhere at shortstop, but I just don't see that right now. Like they don't really have any prospects coming up that are shortstops. If they wanted to pay, a veteran shortstop big time money, they had the last 2 off seasons. They had plenty of opportunities to do that and didn't. So I still think Lux is going to be the guy at shortstop. So that's why I'd go Vargas at second.
Yeah, I mean, Vargas has to be because Lux is the shortstop of the future and Bush is the third baseman of the future. Like, I mean, obviously, Vargas has to be the guy at second base. Blake, I'll let you have this one. EB wants to know, do you agree with the tip prompt on the credit card transaction, food and beverage purchases at Dodger Stadium? It's too bad our guy Scotty's not here because this is Scotty's favorite topic in the world. I'm not convinced that this isn't his burner account posting this, but Blake, your thoughts?
Tip culture has gotten out of control. I'm all for tipping well when you go to a sit-down restaurant and you're getting served, but tipping for someone to take your money and do a 360 spin to grab your food and then put it back on the table, it's just a little ridiculous, especially when they're asking for like 15, 20, 25%. Like
of
maybe
overpriced food and drink.
Yeah, like you're paying $40 for your drink, hot dogs, fries, and everything, and then they want 15% to like take your money. It's just a little out of control.
Yeah.
I mean, if anyone wants to tip them, good on you, go for it. But I don't see any point to tipping those workers there.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. Well, Scotty agrees wholeheartedly with everything Frank says. Hallelujah. Do we see Gavin Stone again this year, Daniel, with the way the AA rotation has performed and how bad he was? Do you think Stone makes another appearance or as guys get healthier?
We got to see him at least turn it around at the AAA level before you could even talk about that.
Yeah.
So I'd say probably not, to be honest, just because I think they're going to be getting some starters back healthy. So the other young guys that they've called up have been better than him. So I think a lot would have to go wrong to where you're at the point where you're giving Stone another chance. But also that could also mean a lot went right on his part where he figured it out at AAA and he's pitching really well. And we're sitting here at the end of August and he looks really good. Then I think you definitely give him a call. So I'd say no, but I'd love for him to surprise me and I'd love for him to turn it around and we do see him again.
Jonathan asks, if the Dodgers had to deal from the major league roster to plug some holes, who would they trade? Blake, you hinted at it earlier. You're ready for sell mode for the 2023 Los Angeles Dodgers. So knock yourself out here, bud.
I'm not going to say sell mode. My take is that they shouldn't buy. And I say that because I feel like they have too many holes on their roster to justify going out and trading future assets to fill them. I'd rather just see them kind of stay with what they have. And if it works out, great. Maybe they get hot. If it doesn't, well, you're kind of in a reset year to begin with anyways. If they went out and signed a good starting pitcher and a shortstop or someone in the offseason, my tone would probably be different on this right now. But they've kind of been in a reset year since the beginning. So I just don't feel like it's worth it to go trade for a starting pitcher, 2 or 3 relievers, 1 or 2 bats. It's just a lot to fill. And with prices at the trade deadline to begin with, it's not an ideal time to buy. Usually it's something you want to do when you're really confident about your team. But I'm just not that confident about this team right now. So I'd rather just hope they get hot, maybe get 1 or 2 small pieces and see if they can kind of figure it out and help them like the Braves did when they went and got Eddie Rosario and Jock. They were more just kind of plug and play type guys instead of like going out and getting a big name. So that's where I'm at. It's probably an unpopular take, but I just wouldn't risk the future to try and fill holes on this team right now.
I like the guy who says, Blake the wet blanket and Blake go to sleep. I appreciate both of those comments. Here's kind of one counter that I would say to that, which is we're already talking about a 40-man roster crunch that the Dodgers are currently experiencing. That 40-man roster crunch is only going to get worse because while they're having to figure out who are the 2 guys we're going to DFA in order to make room for Hudson and Jimmy Nelson, they got about 10 guys on the 60-day IL who all have to be added back to the 40-man roster at the end of the year, plus the Landon Knack type players who have to be protected from the Rule 5 draft moving forward. So my only counter to that is they actually have a surplus of guys, Eddys Leonard, Yorvis Vivas, those types of players who are currently sitting on the 40-man roster who, like, what are we doing with these guys on the roster? They're not playing. They're still a year or two away from being moved. So if I was the Dodgers, I would start seriously considering who are all of the guys that need to be on the 40-man roster next season. And who do I value the most of those players? Sheehan got added earlier than expected. As I said, Landon Knack has to get added. You've already got Miller. You've already got Grove. You've already got Pepio. Like, you have all of these pitchers. You can't possibly expect to carry all those guys on the 40-man roster moving forward would be one sort of position I have. So I think they do have the freedom to make some moves because they kind of have to do something with these guys anyway. So you might move them for some pieces that are going to be helpful in the process. I actually think offensively, I would say, I think they could get away with adding one bat. It's a guy who can hit lefties and who could play the outfield. I have my name. I'll share it momentarily because I want to let Daniel respond to this first. But I think that is the solution. I think if you add one starting pitcher to this rotation, that shifts a Sheehan or a Bobby Miller or even both of those guys into the bullpen. And I think you can fix some of your things. So I really think the Dodgers could get by with adding a left-handed hitting outfielder, one starting pitcher who becomes one of the top 3 or 4 guys that you've got, and maybe one bullpen arm, like a Chris Martin type who they added last year, who isn't, a back end guy necessarily, but a middle of the pen guy who feels good. So I think you can accomplish all 3 of those things while also offloading some of the surplus that you have on the 40-man roster. That's my take. Daniel?
I'm with you. I'm not negative Nancy like Blake over here. I think when you look at the guys that they got coming back from injury, there's not necessarily, like, a month from now, there might not necessarily be as many holes as there are right now. Like, if you get Hudson back and he looks good, if Julio comes back and he looks good, then you don't have as many holes. I'm with you. I do think they need to add one right-handed bat. I think they probably need to add one, leverage type reliever. And then we'll see about starting pitching. I feel like starting pitching is the hardest thing to trade for at the deadline, just because you look around the league and every team needs it. So I think it would be great to get like a middle of the rotation type starter. But I think if you look at Julio coming back, Dustin May, who knows, we might get him back sometime in August or whatever. I don't think you can necessarily count on that. Walker Buehler, I'm not counting on that either, but you never know. So I think we'll see. We still got over a month until the trade deadline. Like, things could be dramatically different a month from now than they are now, either in one direction or the other. Like, we might be sitting here a month from now and the Dodgers are floating around 500, and then I think we'd all agree with Blake. Or we could be sitting here a month from now and they're 20 games over 500 in first place, and we might be like, oh, they really only have 1 or 2 holes. Like, let's go out and get what they need. So we'll see. I'm not negative the way Blake is. I understand where he's coming from. It hasn't been pretty this season, but I also think we've seen in previous years, there's teams who win 88 games that go on to win the World Series. Like, it's all about who gets hot at the right time. And I still think this team is going to make the playoffs. So if you're in the playoffs, you have a chance to get hot at the right time. So we'll see. We'll see in a month from now. I don't think, any trades are happening tomorrow. But I'm not as inclined to just say give up on the season and let's, just go with what we got.
A real turnaround story in the comments. Blake was getting absolutely buried there for a solid 7 minutes, and then the people come to his defense there. So I'm happy for you on that one, Blake. I've said this name to both of you. Both of you have laughed at me for saying this name. Will Myers is currently available for free. This is a guy who has been atrocious in 2023. Let me get this out of the way. He's been terrible. His weighted runs created plus against left-handed hitters in 2023 is 6. Yes, 6, not quite Austin Barnes levels bad, but it's close. It's close. The flip side to that is, for his career, he's an 800 OPS hitter against lefties. He was 130 weighted runs created plus last year, 126 the year before that, 178 the year before that, all against left-handed pitchers. He's free. I mean, we're talking about having to go out and find guys, and it's going to be hard. He's literally free. Go sign him. Send him on a rehab assignment for a week. Let RVS work his magic and see what happens. If it doesn't work out, it's cheaper than the Cole Hamels failed experiment. That's all I'm going to say. Will Myers. Blake, am I crazy?
No, but I don't think you can say go take a chance on Will Myers when you're also saying there's a 40-man roster crunch, which to kind of
Oh,
go back.
Yanni, get Yanni out of here, Blake. That's fine.
But
DFA Yanni tomorrow.
but to kind of go back on the point of that, with the 40-man roster crunch, I kind of want to bring up. I feel like it's hard to say the team doesn't have the depth, and that's kind of where we're talking about with their problems right now, while also saying they have a 40-man roster crunch. I don't think those two things can work together. You're either going to have depth and a good deep system, or you're not going to have that with the 40-man. So
yeah.
And then
my
also,
point is that a lot of those guys on the 40-man, like Vivas, like Edis Leonard, like Vanasco, like you've got these guys who are clinging to the bottom of the 40-man roster who are at minimum a year away from contributing. So I'm not even saying get rid of those guys. I'm just saying they have a bunch of guys that have needed to be added to the 40-man roster. And as some people pointed out, they've lost guys like Ryan Noda in the past because they've just had to let them walk because of a 40-man roster crunch. So I'm generally agreeing with you. There's probably like 6 relief pitchers they could DFA tomorrow, and it wouldn't even move the needle on this entire, situation. And there's a bunch of guys on the 60-day IL who they could DFA, and it probably wouldn't even make the news. So I sort of agree with you, but I also think the nature of the 40-man is not just the 40 guys that are most eligible to contribute today. You obviously know that, but for the people listening.
Yeah, that's fair.
Daniel, anything to add? Will Myers, you in on Will Myers?
I mean, sure, but I don't think we're gonna sit here in October and be like, yeah, we turned our season around when we signed Will Myers. Like maybe he could come in and be in the lineup once a week and be all right, but I don't think that's gonna change all that much.
All I need is a guy who can play the corner outfield. He's average out there and hit lefties. That's all I'm asking for. I think he could do those two things. It's better than Austin Barnes.
He's got a 6 weighted runs created plus against lefties. Single digits, 6.
He's been Austin Barnes for his left-handed pitching this year.
Yeah. A small sample size. Did he get signed? Somebody's saying he's an Oriole. Did that happen? I haven't seen that.
No, they're talking about Aaron Hicks.
Okay, Aaron Hooks. Okay, good. All right, let's get to one food question. I think this is going to be a fun one. If you hate our food questions, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. I heard this on a podcast, and this had Blake Williams written all over it. So the question was your 3 favorite cookies. And this could be like a traditional flavor, just like chocolate chip. You could go a specific Girl Scout cookie type. You could go Oreos. I mean, it's a wide berth here. And so, Daniel, as one of the 2 people on staff at this company who has normal food opinions alongside myself, I'll let you go first. Top 3 cookie flavors, and people in the comments, throw yours in there. We'll throw these up there and we'll see what wins.
Yeah. So my top 2 are the traditional ones. I'm going just a regular chocolate chip cookie and a double stuffed Oreos. Got to be double stuffed. Regular Oreos just don't get it done. So double stuffed Oreos and chocolate chip cookies are the 2 most popular cookies, and they're the best 2. So that to me isn't really up for debate. My third one, there's a lot of good choices here. I went back and forth a lot, but I'm going with I think it's called a half moon or a black and white cookie. Some people call it. It's the one that it's like half the black frosting, half the white frosting. It's usually kind of lemon flavored. That's top 3 for me.
Okay. Nothing with frosting for me are going to be on my list. I've got chocolate chip in the number 1 spot. I'm with you. It's just a classic. There's a reason it's a classic. Chocolate chip is number 1. I'm going snickerdoodle number 2. Love a good snickerdoodle. I don't want frosting or icing anywhere near my cookies. And then number 3, I had to look up the name of this. It's called a crinkle cookie. It's like a Christmas one, but it's the chocolate cookie, like super dark chocolate cookie that's covered in powdered sugar on the outside, kind of crunchy-ish on the outside, gooey on the inside. So crinkle cookie number 3. If there's such thing as a brownie cookie, that would have been in that spot, but that felt like cheating. So I'll go chocolate chip, snickerdoodle, and a crinkle cookie. The floor is yours, Blake. I can't wait for this. Please do not disappoint me with a normal food opinion.
I mean, my number 1 are the peanut butter cookies where you put the Hershey's Kiss on top. They have them like the recipes on the back of the Hershey's wrappers. Okay. Usually they're like a Christmas one. You put some sugar on them. Those are the best, absolutely, hands down. Nothing else is close. Second, probably one with some white chocolate in it, like the white chocolate macadamia, or like the chocolate cookies with the white chocolate in them. Okay. I'm not sure if they have any kind of name or anything. And then third, I'll probably go...
In the third spot, please just go Zag. Hardcore Zag, please.
I'll probably just go with like a sugar cookie or something. Just plain traditional. I'm not huge on icing, so like all those ones, I'm agreeing with you there. The black and white cookies are very boring to me. So yeah, just sugar cookies are
You let
pretty
me
good.
down, Blake. It's a very normal
He goes
opinion.
with a sugar cookie.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
then I'll say another cookie's boring.
what cookie would I have gone with that would have like solidified your food takes with what I say? Like, what's a weird cookie in your mind?
Oh, you feel like an oatmeal raisin guy to me, if we're being
Nah.
honest. I could have had you.
Oh.
I could have had you in the number one spot.
Oatmeal
No
raisin-
raisins for me.
Here, you want a hot take during the segment? I'll give you a hot take.
Okay, here we go. Good.
Thin mints are bad. That's my hot
Okay.
take.
Nah.
Blake,
Thin mints were considered on my list.
I'll
I do not
one up
like-
you, Daniel. Girl
I don't-
Scout cookies in general overrated.
I'm with you on that. There's a couple good ones. I like the peanut butter ones, but overall, I'm with you. I'm not a big Girl Scout cookie guy, and just overall, I don't really like mint things like mint chocolate chip ice cream. I'm out on like that's just toothpaste to me.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. Blake, you a Girl Scout cookie guy?
I eat them and I think they're okay, but I do think they're kind of overrated. Like they get hyped up a little too much.
There you go. Look at us all agreeing on a hot take food. There we go. So, all right. Well, if you stuck around this long, we greatly appreciate it. Again, a good week for the Dodgers. All right. I know they lost today, but they went 4-1 this week. The bullpen is back, baby. Blake confirmed it. He trusts all the relievers from here on out. 28 in the third.
He
One
trusts
earned
them
run.
so much that he doesn't think the Dodgers should go out and get anyone at the
Yeah,
deadline.
exactly.
We're all set. We're all
They're
set.
all set.
We hardly talked about Fire Eisen too, and that's my guy. He's
That's
gonna
your
come
guy,
back
who?
and save the bullpen.
Yeah, well, we'll see about if he ever does come back. He feels like a 0 appearances for the Dodger kind of a guy in his career, but hopefully not. Hopefully not. So we appreciate you all. We are going to be doing 2 live watch-alongs this week. They are early games on Tuesday and Friday. I think they're like 5 p.m. games. Tuesday might be a 5:40 p.m. in Coors Field. But we will be doing a live watch-along. So yeah, 5:40 on Tuesday, 5:10 on Friday. So be sure to join us. That's at playback.tv/DodgerBlue1958. We will have live post-game shows right here on the Dodger Blue YouTube page for both of those as well as content coming throughout the week as usual. So make sure you subscribe, ring the notification bell here. If you're listening via podcast, thank you very much. Please subscribe, rate, and review. We'd greatly appreciate it. That's Daniel. That's Blake. My name is Jeff. As always, enjoy the rest of your day. And of course, go Dodgers.